Today, 4 Republicans broke with the president and voted to condemn Donald Trump's most recent racist comments. But that's 4 more Republicans than usually break with the president. That Donald Trump has taken complete control of the Republican Party is obvious to everyone. How he did it is not. That story is told in the new book, American Carnage, on the front lines of the Republican Civil War and the rise of President Trump by Tim Alberta. It tells the story of Paul Ryan's public subservience to the president in Paul Ryan's own words. Quote, "I told myself I got to have a relationship with this guy to help him get his mind right, because I'm telling you, he didn't know anything about government. So I thought, I can't be his scold like I was. I wanted to scold him all the time. What I learned as I went on to scratch that itch, I had to do it in private. So I did it in private all the time." And he actually ended up kind of appreciating it. We had more arguments with each other than pleasant conversations over the last 2 years. And it never leaked. Today, the man who took Paul Ryan's place, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, insists that Paul Ryan never said that.
You're quoting something based upon a book that I have not read, and then I hadn't talking to the Speaker Ryan. I know that's not the words of what he would use because I've been in rooms with him and with the president.
And joining us now is the author of that book, Tim Alberta. He is the chief political correspondent for Politico magazine and the author of American Carnage. Tim, Kevin McCarthy says your book is false. Paul Ryan never said that.
I'm happy to give him the audio tape if you'd like to listen to it. I'm not sure what else to say.
You should have brought it tonight.
To the majority leader.
So it happens to be on audio tape. But this is the very same Kevin McCarthy who, during the campaign, was quoted from behind closed doors from a secret staff source, Republican staff source, saying he believed that Donald Trump took money from Vladimir Putin. And there he is today, doing exactly a public execution of the transformation that this book describes for Republicans, going from Trump takes money from Putin to I don't believe Paul Ryan would ever have said that about Donald Trump.
How dare he? Why would he say that about the dear leader? Look, Kevin McCarthy is just one of many Republicans who, as you noted, Lawrence, have essentially fallen in line behind President Trump, and they do so for any number of reasons. Political self-preservation, a fear of backlash from the president and from the president's base. And I think what's so fascinating in surveying this modern Republican Party is how far it has come in such a short period of time. This was not a Trumpian entity as recently as 10 years ago. George W. Bush's presidency, for its many failings, was a presidency built upon these ideals of compassionate conservatism. And, refugee resettlement was a huge priority. Re-entry programs for prisoners was, education in urban environments. These were the bedrock domestic policy goals of the Bush administration. Of course, we know that they spent tens of millions of dollars trying to alleviate AIDS in Africa. The list goes on. The point is, what you've seen is nothing short of a wholesale transformation of the Republican Party in the last decade. And there's a lot that goes into that. It's a long story, obviously. But what you're seeing today, and specifically, I would say, what you've seen over the last 96 hours in terms of the Republican Party's response to Donald Trump's remarks, or in most cases their lack of response to his remarks, speaks volumes about where the party is and how firmly Donald Trump has taken the party of Reagan, the party of George W. Bush, and turned it into the party of Trump.
Yeah, there's no previous Republican president who would have stood for any of this. I'm fascinated by the policy switches on things like international trade and other things. It is stunning to me because that happened over a very short period of time. People who had completely different views of international trade during the presidential campaign, just over 2 years ago, guys like Chuck Grassley and others completely going along with these tariffs that they would have never gone along with before.
It's one of the best stories that got no attention at the time, very little attention at the time, was that in the heat of the 2016 campaign, Paul Ryan and Ted Cruz, who did not get along, these two guys wrote a joint op-ed in USA Today endorsing TPA, basically the legislation that would have given President Obama, President Obama, the ability to negotiate trade agreements.
Partnership.
And Ted Cruz, about 3 weeks after this op-ed published, and again, he's in the middle of this, hotly contested primary against Donald Trump. Trump. And Ted Cruz and his team, who are very smart, they've got their ear to the ground, they're watching what Trump is doing, and they're seeing this appeal that he is achieving with the electorate. And he is obviously shattering Republican orthodoxy in so doing. And Cruz says to his guys, look, I think we need to have a change of heart here. I think we need to come out and publicly disavow that stance that we just took with Ryan a couple of weeks ago. And his guys said, what are you, crazy? We just wrote this op-ed. And basically the decision was, look, do we get accused of being a flip-flopper now and wear that for a couple of weeks and take the beating? Or do we allow Trump to bludgeon us on the issue of trade for the next year and a half? Now, that's a small anecdote, but it speaks volumes about where people were at that point in the party. Because, again, you spoke to it a second ago, the rate of change is what is so whiplash-inducing at this point. This didn't happen over a period of 30 or 40 or 50 years. It's really happened, you could even consolidate it down into a period of probably 36 months in which some core bedrock Republican principles that had been held since the Reagan era have essentially been thrown out the window.
Everyone marvels at the Trump relationship to evangelical voters who, in Donald Trump's own words, are privately referred to in your book as the effing evangelicals.
No, it's a term of endearment. I should note, it's fascinating. Obviously, we're all transfixed on this relationship between the white evangelical Republican voter and Donald Trump. And obviously, this is a group of voters who had spent years demanding a certain degree of moral leadership from the highest office in the land and really from all government officials. And people want to know, how could they have possibly forged this partnership with this guy, this thrice married, philanderer who paraded the pinups and the porn stars through the tabloids? And I think the answer, Lawrence, is really quite simple, actually. It's transactional. We know that Donald Trump is transactional. I think what we don't fully appreciate about evangelical voters is many of them felt let down by the George W. Bush presidency. They felt like we had elected one of our own, a guy who famously said in that debate that Jesus was his role model, a guy who sits in the pews with us, but he didn't do all that much for us. Remember, on a lot of these social issues, a lot of the conservative movement thought that George W. Bush was kind of weak in the knees. So by the time 2016 rolls around and these people feel like they've been trampled under Barack Obama and the American left for the last 8 years, and they are under siege from forces of culture and politics, they're looking for somebody to get in the arena and start throwing haymakers. And Trump, again, give him credit. He's prescient. He sees this. And Trump goes to them and basically says, look, you know that I'm not one of you. I can't speak your language. I don't agree with you probably on half these issues, but I'm willing to go to war for you guys in a way that none of the rest of these Republican patsies are willing to. They might talk a good game, but when the going gets tough, they're going to fold because they are all creatures of political convention. I am not. I'm beholden to no one. And it is impossible to articulate just how appealing that message was to these evangelicals. And essentially, it became this transactional relationship. They would give him undying allegiance, and he would give them everything they had wanted and didn't get out of George W. Bush.
Tim Alberta, and the book is American Carnage, and it is the single best explanation of how we got to Trumpism in the Republican Party. Tim, when the book tour slows down, I need you to come back to do this one question, which I think will take an entire segment, and that is, when the next president of the United States takes the oath of office, does Trumpism disappear? You have some time to think about it, and we're going to do a few minutes on it next chance you get to come by.
It's good homework.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.